And for Waltz, like getting Goldberg to carry your leaks and being able to use him to move the message is especially important because Goldberg represents someone from the enemy camp, from the other side, but you share something in common with him. You both want to see the US attack Iran.
So Max Blumenthal recently went on Judge Napolitano's podcast, Judging Freedom, to talk about the recent Yemen bombing leak that came out of Signal, and really what this says about Mike Waltz, Pete Hegseth, and others, but also what it says about the Trump administration and its foreign policy in general. So let's watch, let's react.
What's your take on this? How did Goldberg get into that mix?
Well, by Jeffrey Goldberg's own admission, he received a signal message from Mike Waltz, the National Security Council director, 2 days before he was apparently mistakenly brought into the 19-member Bomb Yemen signal chat of Trump national security principals and top Trump advisors. Why was Mike Waltz reaching out to Jeffrey Goldberg? Let's look at Jeffrey Goldberg's history. This is someone who, as a young man, was a follower of Meir Kahane and made Aliyah to Israel and became a prison guard at the Ketziot concentration camp, guarding Palestinians during the first Intifada, wrote a book about it, sort of reformed himself, but remained a key bigwig within the Zionist world and became one of the Beltway media's top access journalists partially as a result of that. And so Jeffrey Goldberg, during the run-up to the Iraq War, was used by Dick Cheney to draw a link between Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein. In the New Yorker, Dick Cheney cited Jeffrey Goldberg's reporting twice in Meet the Press appearances. Under Obama, Benjamin Netanyahu used Jeffrey Goldberg to try to push the Obama administration into attacking Iraq. Goldberg was pushing out all these stories that an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear sites at Natanz was imminent unless the U.S. would step up and do something.
Yeah, it's no mystery why a person like Jeffrey Goldberg, even though ostensibly he comes from the other side, right? This is a muckraker that's spread, left-wing hysterics about Trump, the fine people hoax, the losers and sucker hoax, all sorts of things like that. But he does happen to agree with Mike Waltz in virtually every way on foreign policy. And that's why Mike Waltz was one of Trump's worst foreign policy picks for his cabinet. A lot of people said that at the time. A lot of dissidents warned about that at the time. So I think we know how the two are connected. It doesn't make sense to me that he was included purposefully in this message, though. I know some people have said that, but it just comes off making Mike Waltz look really bad and Hegseth look like a propagandist. It doesn't make sense why he would do that when he could just spill the beans to Goldberg personally.
Now there's momentum again for an attack on Iran, and suddenly the NSC chief reaches out to Jeffrey Goldberg because obviously he was looking to move the neocon message on behalf of the neocon elements in the Trump administration. And it looks like Goldberg was in Mike Waltz's phone and he brought him into this group. To me, it has to be a mistake. Otherwise it's suicidal, because Jeffrey Goldberg, while being pro-war, while representing a neoconservative element, is also editor-in-chief of one of the most anti-Trump magazines in the country, in The Atlantic. So why would you bring him in to this smoke-filled chat room?
I think we all know he agrees with Mike Waltz on foreign policy. I do think, again, the inclusion was a mistake. It looks like too much egg on the face of the administration for that to have been deliberate. It doesn't make sense for Waltz to have done that. Their relations make sense, and that is clearly deliberate, but not the inclusion in this special chat in my mind.
So Mike Waltz literally brought him in, but he must have thought it was somebody else's phone number?
Well, if your name is showing up as a bubble that has your first two initials on Signal, it could have been the U.S. trade representative whose initials were JG. It doesn't seem like Mike Waltz or whoever's operating Mike Waltz's devices is the brightest bulb. And so there it was. I mean, what else could the explanation be? We're hearing from Trump cultists that what really happened was Trump was trying to get some kind of secret message out there, which resulted in hugely embarrassing hearings today at the Senate. So it really just doesn't stand to reason that this was intentional. It was an own goal, but they were lucky that Jeffrey Goldberg was the man in there, because what did Jeffrey Goldberg do once he discovered that this chat was real? It wasn't some kind of prank. He did the opposite of what I would have done.
Right.
What I think any
what you
adversarial
would have
journalist
done would have been absolutely protected by the Pentagon Papers case. The government is stupid enough to raise the blind and let you look in. You're a journalist. You're entitled to publish it. It's of material interest to the public. Instead,
Absolutely.
Goldberg shut it down.
Absolutely. Jeffrey Goldberg went and basically told the manager that he was in a place he wasn't supposed to be. Why would he do that? He left the chat. Any journalist, I mean, what I would have done was I would have stayed in there, gathered as much information as possible. I would have had a best-selling book. I would have had hundreds of scoops. I would have seen how the sausage is really made. This is an illegal war. And that's what the story really should be about, is the policy. But what Jeffrey Goldberg did by leaving, then telling the White House, then blowing this whole thing up, was to make it an OPSEC failure scandal, which is sort of a palace intrigue about a bunch of bumbling idiots, from the stupid party who aren't supposed to be in these posts that should be occupied by really smart guys like Jake Sullivan, screwing around with national security. The real story is a gargantuan empire waging an illegal war without congressional approval on a poor besieged country, because it is controlled by the only force on the planet that is actually taking up arms to stop the Gaza genocide, which Jeffrey Goldberg supports. So Jeffrey Goldberg didn't want it to go there. He steps away, makes it about OPSEC, about bumbling fools, and that fits with the whole Beltway press culture, which wants us to be.
I think Max is so right here. I couldn't have said it better myself. We're 10 years into a proxy war on behalf of Saudi Arabia against Yemen, but now it's kind of turned into a proxy war on the side of Israel because the Houthis sympathize with the Palestinians and have done certain things to lend the Palestinians support. So he's exactly right. Goldberg made this into a story about embarrassment rather than what it should be, an illegal war where the president is escalating a war theater. After campaigning, it's essentially his entire campaign on basically non-interventionist foreign policy. Basically. He had some hiccups there, but that is the mandate that he had, and that's why a lot of dissidents supported him. And for this not even to get into the things that Hegseth said about how to sell this strike to the public, it was Biden failed, which he didn't. Biden pummeled Yemen with bombs throughout 2024 also, and it's Houthis' ties to Iran to drum up support for this strike, despite the fact that these guys campaigned on a non-interventionist foreign policy. That's the real story.
Why are Trump, Hegseth, even Sebastian Gorka trashing the Atlantic rather than trashing Mike Waltz?
Great question. Why isn't Mike Waltz fired?
Right.
I mean, Trump fired.
Why isn't Mike Waltz being prosecuted? That kid, Jack Teixeira, is in jail for 20 years for revealing far less relevant, far less timely national security data than what Waltz caused to be revealed by Goldberg.
Well, even from the point of view of Donald Trump, I mean, he just made Trump look bad, very, very bad. And Trump tends to fire people when they do that or become vengeful towards them. He's fired hundreds and hundreds of Department of Veterans Affairs, longtime employees. But unlike Mike Waltz, they don't have the backing of Miriam Adelson. I mean, Mike Waltz is there for a reason. He is a longtime Israel lobby plant who rose through the congressional ranks because he is an anti-Iran hardliner. And so his position for now is secure. And if I were even Pete Hegseth or any of these other not very cultivated Trump principles, I would still be very wary of dealing with Mike Waltz. ever again. And what Gorka and Hegseth are doing by just attacking Jeffrey Goldberg as a leftist, fake news media journalist, non-journalist, is trying to keep the Trump base secure. Those, Hegseth even brought up Russia, like the Russiagate hoax. And that's to make the Trump cultists believe that this is actually some kind of fake scandal that the liberal media is putting on Trump, when in reality, it's about the Trump administration being heavily penetrated and controlled by neoconservative elements like Mike Waltz, who are reaching out to Jeffrey Goldberg to sell a policy that contravenes the America First policy that Trump sold his base. So it's all just like, before we see a kind of a circular firing line, they're circling the wagons to protect, number one, Donald Trump, who has sold out his base already within just a few months.
So true. Both the responses of Hegseth and Trump show deflection tactics to kind of make the Atlantic the issue and Jeffrey Goldberg the issue, when this is sincerely embarrassing. It should be especially embarrassing for Hegseth and Waltz. Waltz for allowing Goldberg in, and Hegseth for talking more about how to sell this strike than, the strategic reasoning behind it and the justification, which he danced around, but he just said, let's just blame it on Biden and Iran. It's just so absurd. J.D. Vance thankfully pushed back a little bit against this and said, I think we're making a mistake here, which that surprised me a little bit. But that's so true. Max is so right here. The real story is about the ineptitude and also the illegality of this strike.
I'm going to play a clip in just a moment, but before we do, one of the things that Goldberg quotes Hegseth as saying, and this is really crazy in light of what has happened, is that Hegseth says, no one knows who the Houthis are. Just say Biden failed and Iran funded them. Good Lord. If no one knows who the Houthis are, he doesn't know who he's trying to kill and why he's trying to kill them?
Well, he's basically saying the American public doesn't care and has no idea why we should be fighting these people in Yemen, because they clearly pose no threat to the American public. J.D. Vance, who's sort of on the other, Hegseth's on the Trump loyalist, Trump lackey side of the debate. He'll do whatever he thinks Trump wants. And once the policy's handed down, Hegseth's job is just to sell it to the public. He's just a Fox News hack. Mike Waltz is on Netanyahu's side. He's playing the role that like a Mike Pompeo would have played in this administration. Right. And then on the other side, you've got Joe Kent, who is operating under Tulsi Gabbard as her counterterrorism director, and J.D. Vance, who are sort of the realist, more cautious voices. And you can see both of them speak out against the policy. This is why I thought it would be so valuable if you had an actual journalist in there, unlike Jeffrey Goldberg, who would have stayed there and documented all of the debates as they panned out. But Vance says there's no American interest being advanced here. Only 3% of U.S. shipping goes through the Suez Canal. What we're basically doing is protecting European shipping. He doesn't say Israeli shipping because that's the only thing that the Houthis were planning to attack. And then Joe Kent says, why are we operating on such a tight timeline? We could wait even longer, another month, because Kent is trying to delay the war. Both of them are clearly against it, but they ultimately have to fall in line like good soldiers, or they won't have careers.
That's right. And just a reference that Napolitano made earlier to Jack Teixeira, he was the so-called Discord leaker who, in I believe 2023, leaked certain things about intelligence related to Ukraine, including the fact that the U.S. had boots on the ground, some special forces in Ukraine, divulged before that was ever known. That was a revelation, and the feds threw the book at him. I think he pled guilty, and I think he's already in jail right now. But these people get away with stuff like this, which is far more critical to national security and the ins and outs of troop movements and military strikes than that guy divulged, which was truthful information about how the regime lies to us about war, how they said that the U.S. is not directly involved in Ukraine. So you can really see the difference here.
So there's a
Chris.
debate going on there, and what we can see through these very valuable conversations is an acknowledgement that this war on Yemen serves no national security purpose for the United States and is not protecting Americans.
It's an absolutely unlawful act that they are engaging in. Congress doesn't even have the ability to declare war against Yemen because Yemen poses no threat whatsoever to the United States. Turns my stomach when this happens. And I did not know about Goldberg's background. The Goldberg was actually a prison guard for the IDF.
Yeah, he actually laid hands on defenseless Palestinian prisoners by his own
Is he an American or is he an Israeli?
Well, it looks like he's both. He was born in the U.S. and he was bullied as a boy and got into Meir Kahana's fascist ideology because he thought, I want to be a tough Jew who can fight for himself. And then he made Aliyah. He emigrated to Israel and joined the Israeli army as a young man, became a prison guard. He was assigned to guard Palestinians who were arrested during the First Intifada, and then went on to write a column for the Jerusalem Post, an Israeli newspaper. And that's where he sort of cut his teeth as a journalist. Then he came back to the U.S. and wrote this book, Prisoners, about how he actually became friends with one of the men he was guarding. And they learned that, it was wrong and that they should make peace, of course, peace on Israel's terms. And Goldberg emerged subsequently as the leading pro-Israel journalist in Washington, which made him extremely important to every administration. Like if you want to speak to someone who has the confidence of the Israel lobby, but who's also kind of a liberal, writes pretty well and writes for the New Yorker and the Atlantic of, the enlightened magazines, then you go to Jeffrey Goldberg. That's why he is one of the key access journalists in Washington. That's why Mike Waltz reached out to him.
And what you've just said would be known to Mike Waltz.
Absolutely. I'm sure someone in the lobby told Mike Waltz. And for Waltz, like getting Goldberg to carry your leaks and being able to use him to move the message is especially important because Goldberg represents someone from the enemy camp, from the other side, but you share something in common with him. You both want to see the U.S. attack Iran.
Absolutely right. I think this point's well made too. It's like, it's not that this guy is a hardcore Trump fanatic journalist. He's a left-wing stooge that's allying with Waltz in terms of foreign policy because they both align on the forever war neocon foreign policy. And it's a powerful political dynamic that does have impact and influence in the Trump administration. Trump has been known for kind of ending the Clinton and Bush dynasties in some respect, but he sure as hell does carry out, at least through many of his subordinates, much of their foreign policy, and the neocon influence can't be ignored. It's present in Mike Waltz, it's present in Marco Rubio, it's present in Mike Huckabee and Elise Stefanik, and many others. John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, leans to this side too, but there's no bigger fan of the surveillance state and the Israel lobby and endless wars than Mike Waltz.
Chris, here's Hegseth denying that war plans were discussed in the text, even though I haven't seen a transcript, according to Goldberg, they talked about time, place, and manner and identity of people they wanted to kill. So how he could say war plans were not on there, I don't know. But here he is, cut number 13.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
The NSC said it was authentic.
Play the next one, Chris. This I think you've seen this, but you'll get a kick out of it. Number 14.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in the Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, 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 or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
So again, Hegseth is correct that Goldberg is a left-wing hoaxster hack. He's a muckraker. He spread all like the ridiculous anti-Trump hoaxes like the fine people hoax and losers and suckers, but this is pure deflection. And he's not right that the ships couldn't sail through there. The ships have done a fine job sailing through the Red Sea all throughout this campaign. None of them got hit by the Houthis. This is pure justification and again deflection to try to make the circumstance more about the Atlantic and Goldberg than it is about the incompetence of this and his role in it in trying to sell the American public.
According to Pepe Escobar, who was there in Yemen, and we interviewed him yesterday, all they've done is destroyed residential neighborhoods and kill civilians.
Well, that's the Hegseth exchange I was referring to, and he's right that Goldberg should be a discredited journalist, and maybe among MAGA elements he is, because he pushed the losers story that Trump called World War I soldiers losers, according to some random source. But many of his stories have been discredited, but in this case, and Goldberg is traditionally very deceitful, but in this case, it looks like he's telling the truth. They haven't poked holes in anything that Goldberg has said. The issue for them is that Goldberg is now claiming that classified information was not just discussed, but exchanged in that Signal chat group. Goldberg was too cowardly to bring it out and too deferential to power to show us what it was, but that's what he's claiming, which puts them in a world of trouble and raises other questions. I mean, it is an OPSEC scandal, but I don't think that's the real scandal here. Why didn't they use the secure line that the NSA has established for national security officials? There's already a secure line. Why did they use the Signal app, which, as we know, we know the U.S. intelligence has a backdoor into Signal. What were they doing?
Yeah, that's one way to say it, and I'm willing to bet that several of the parties that were involved in this leaked Discord chat raked Hillary Clinton over the coals, criticized the hell out of her for the private email servers that transpired there in 2016 when those revelations came out. So if I'm Hegseth here, I'm pissed at Mike Waltz and for him allowing this to happen, because it makes Hegseth and Waltz both look terrible. And Hegseth, by his own admission, he's essentially berating the American people by saying no one knows who the Houthis are, which might be correct, but then there shouldn't be any U.S. war against the Houthis if no one knows who the Houthis are. This is a huge blemish on the Trump administration, certainly an underrated story. Trump purists will try to sweep this under the rug, say this is 4D chess. Some people are even saying that this leak was deliberate. I think that's crazy. This makes them look bad, even to the generally non-interventionist Trump supporters that maybe didn't agree with Trump on everything, but certainly agreed with him on disengagement and disentanglements with foreign military operations. But I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, do you think that Max Blumenthal is right about this and that the real story is about the illegality of the war and the incompetence on the part of the administration? I would like to hear from you. And until next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.